it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our first webinar in a series of webinars which will launch the KAICIID short films highlighting the role of religious actors in the global development agenda. Please kindly note that the webinar will be recorded and published on the KAICIID website, and that at the end of the webinar we'll post a very short evaluation form which we would kindly invite you to take a minute or two to share your thoughts with us. Also, I would like to inform you that we will be offering interpretation for this webinar, and to do that, please click on interpretation and choose the channel called Spanish. Don't worry, you'll hear Arabic there. Before I move to introduce our distinguished speakers today, I would also like to invite all of you to introduce yourself via the chat function. For example, by stating your name or where you're from or the community you work with or are apart from, so that we know who's listening in today. I am very excited to have 4 specialists on interfaith education with me, and thank you all very much for have taken the time to be with us today. We have with us, in order of speaking, Mr. Kefes Mugabi, who's the Senior Area Manager and Technical Vocational Education Training Specialist from Finchurch Aid, who's joining us from Kampala, Uganda. We have also with us, also from Uganda, Ms. Nagiba Hassan, who's the Executive Director of the Restoring and Empowering Communities Ambassadors Book Club in Uganda, as well as Heidi Rwamwanja, who's the project planner for teacher training at the Faculty of Educational Sciences at the University in Helsinki, and she's providing study material for interworldview communication, interworldview education. And lastly, Dr. Ashin Vichitasara, who is a teacher and educator joining us from Myanmar. So as you can see, we have, we're spanning quite a broad global perspective from our 4 speakers. And sometimes we might be facing internet connectivity problems, and we would please ask you to excuse those. And we hope we'll hear the examples and experiences from all of our speakers in the next hour. And before we hear from them, it is my great pleasure to announce the launch of the video on global goal number 4, Quality Education, Linking Learning to Earning, filmed with the Finchurch Aid in the Rwamwanja refugee settlement in Uganda.
We are in Rwamwanja refugee settlement, which is in southwestern Uganda. Rwamwanja refugee settlement hosts close to 70,000 refugees from Congo. Finchurch Aid commissioned a study in 2012 to establish the major gaps that exist in this settlement where it can support. And the most outstanding gap was youth unemployment. The youth wake up in the morning, they have nothing to do, they just stay there redundant. It was a very big security threat to this country, having such an energetic force without any job. That's how we established the BitVet project to support the youth. We have a very strong selection criteria. We take the youth who are most vulnerable and in the dire need. We link learning to earning, whereby we train the youth and accompany them up to when they get employment. The refugee policy of Uganda allows free movement for refugees. It allows them to work, but also in other countries, the refugees live in camps. But here, refugees live in a settlement. When they come to Uganda, the government of Uganda allocates them plots of land. They build their own houses, they grow their own crops, they keep animals. so they live in a dignity.
Numva aho bari kwigira nja kwiga ibyo gushona, majije kwiga bampa imashini uno ndakoraga. Ndari niga ndakintu nari mfite, nari ngenderaga hasi ndabirato mfite. Ndari niga nari mburaga n'ibyo kurya, ndambaraga n'umwenda. None buno ndambaraga, nabonye n'ibirato, buno ndiho neza, byangiriye akamaro kenshi cyane, narishimye.
Education should focus on life skills for self-sustainability. I really want to comment that KAICIID is answering the gap in education in Uganda. Because at KAICIID, people train life skills and immediately after graduation, they put into practice what they have studied. For instance, we have seen people graduate from KAICIID and they are doing saloon. So even when they don't need certificates and degrees, but they can do saloon work and they can sustain themselves and their families.
Mimi najisikia furaha sana na mimi nasikia mie kama mwanamke kukuwa na nguvu. Niko na ile nguvu ya kujenga nyumba. Ni vitu vinanifurahisha sana. Nilijenga nyumba na yala na hivi niko natajenga nyumba ingine ya saluni.
I work with KAICIID as a career counselor, Rwamwanja refugee settlement. As a career counselor, our major role is to make sure trainees make informed career choices and complete their courses very well. And also, we make sure that we do follow up before and after the training, also linking them to potential employers for employment opportunities.
Kwa hii kazi yenye niko nafanya, ninatauza mashini ya milioni na mitaro 12. Nikimaliza ipata nitafute na bakukwana nitumikia kwa hii kazi na biko na nisaidia juma ngoni za mingi. Nikimaliza niuze na mbuzi.
This year marks the start of the decade of action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And today the world is not on track to achieve those goals within this time frame. The COVID-19 pandemic has abruptly disrupted the implementation towards many of the SDGs. And the current global crisis is a very vivid reminder of the need for global cooperation and solidarity. Even before COVID-19, the progress towards inclusive and equitable quality education was too slow. Over 200 million children will still be out of school in 2030. COVID-19 implications, for example, school closures, kept 90% of all students out of school, reversing years of progress on education worldwide. These inequalities in education are exacerbated by COVID-19. And in low-income countries, children's school completion rate is 79% in the richest 20% of the households, and only 34% in the poorest 20% of the households. Remote learning remains out of reach for at least 500 million students. And even on a more basic level, only 65% of primary schools have, for example, hand washing facilities, which are critical for COVID-19 prevention while being at school. All of these numbers and examples are very daunting. And that is why it is a great pleasure to see the movie that we have just seen and see projects and people who are focusing on supporting equality and equitable education. I would like now to turn to our speakers and hear their opinions and examples about quality education. I would please ask you to keep your interventions to 1 to 2 minutes. And it's my pleasure to start with Mr. Mugabe, whom I would like to congratulate on a really great program and whom we have seen in this first video. We had the pleasure to capture your amazing work and the great success of your program that you're running in the refugee settlement in Uganda. Could you maybe share how this specific project is affected by the current situation and what is happening with the program now during the pandemic? Mr. Kafas Mugabe, please.
Yes, I want to thank you so much, Marlene, for... I want to turn on video. Do you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you much for this opportunity to share about what is happening in this project, but also to thank you for documenting our work in Rwamwanja. I'm glad to inform you that I am the one who started this project in 2015. Up to now, I'm still the area manager. So I have a lot of lessons learned to share with you. I don't want to repeat what you have seen in the video. We have amazing success stories. The project is going on very well. But now I want to talk about the effect of coronavirus, the corona pandemic. These youth, the schools were closed on 20th March of this year, and all the youth were asked to go back home because of the pandemic. But there are a number of issues, especially protection issues. When you look at the girls who used to come every day for the training, they get their break tea at school and also get lunch at school and go back home after attaining some skills. Now it's different, they have to stay home. But as Film Church Aid, we had to make a strategy to address some of these challenges, that the children, these youth will not sit home or would not just fold our hands and watch while these youth have no protection while they are home. We started a home learning program, home training program, whereby our instructors, we mapped out, we have what we call zones in Rwamwanja refugee settlement. We have 13 zones. So we mapped out these zones and distributed our instructors following the Ministry of Health guidelines. For example, washing hands, putting on masks, and keeping this social distancing. And they had to visit these youth and find them in their homes with assignments. What they had trained in, they go with the materials, take to the youth, give them assignments. For 2 days, the instructors have to come back and see what the youth have done. When I talk about assignment, it may confuse. I want to inform you that we have courses that youth are doing at the center. We have hairdressing, we have AVET, we have motorcycle repair, to mention but a few. So the instructor goes with the material and take to the youth and give assignments. You are going to do this, this, and guide the youth on what to do. So after 2 days, the instructor will go back to evaluate. But also, as we move to the homes of these youth, we also collect stories from them, hear how they are being affected. We got success stories and some challenges, but I'm happy to inform you that these youth during the lockdown managed to produce products and take them to the market, to the nearby people who would need them, and they buy, and these youth would earn something and put in the pocket. So I'm happy to inform you that we also had radio programs to address some of the issues that we get from the trainees, but also encourage them to continue, do work while at home. And as we speak now, the schools have been reopened. The youth are back. That is good news I have to give you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kefes. And you shared with us how during the pandemic, when the youth could not come to school, you attempted to address the issue by bringing school to their homes, which worked really well for you. And I'm very happy to hear that schools have now reopened, and I hope it remains like that. In the film, we heard that you're linking learning to earning. That's the title. How does the career guidance that the young people receive connect to the counseling work that you're also doing? Can you maybe illustrate a few examples for us?
Once again, thank you so much. During the training, we have best practices as FinChurch-Aid, because I would like to share with you that before we started this project in Rwamwanja, there were a few other agencies who used to train in skills, but their model was very different. They train and they dump. They train and dump. They just count numbers of trainees. So the youth go back to the settlement with a skill, and they are not supported to earn from the skill. So that's why our approach is unique in nature. We link learning to earning. During the training, we have best practices. I'll be very brief. One of them is skills validation. When the youth come, we first validate the skill, because we don't assume that everyone is at the same level. So some of the youth can train others. We support the youth to make the right career choices when they have just come. So you are asking me about guidance and counseling and the career guidance. The youth are supported to make the right career choices. We also adopted a business model supported by our colleague Ville Waklin. He came to Rwamwanja and we worked together to have a business model that the youth do not only get the skills, but also have the business part of it. And then we have the industry training, whereby we take out these youth from the training center to practice what they have been learning at the school. They are assessed by DIT. DIT, the assessing body that give them certificates that allow them to work in the whole country. And we have a memorandum of understanding with the private sector. In Uganda, the biggest employer is the private sector. So we work with them that they can support these youth during the training, but also they are the potential employers of these youth. And then lastly, we link the youth to livelihood opportunities where they can get support from some organizations that have maybe cash for work and all that. But in brief, we have a strong career guidance model whereby these youth, after and during the training, they need a lot of career guidance. As you are aware that they are coming from the war area, they need a lot of career support, and we do referral to some those which are big cases. We refer them to social support organizations. Well, we have one Rwamwanja, it's called Tutapona. We refer them that they can be supported. But in general, I would like to say that this helps to bring out the youth who are ready to go and interface business or are ready to go and start the world of employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we heard how you use a very sustainable training approach that integrates both the personal needs, but also the economic needs of the young people you're working with. This approach makes sure that you partner with the private sector, that you follow up, that you also encourage social and psychological support where it's needed to really have a holistic way of supporting the young people that you're working with, which is really very inspiring. And we have heard also that during the pandemic, you were also specifically concerned about the girls in your program. And we have to say that around the world currently, girls are specifically affected by the lack of education or the lack of access. 132 million girls are out of school, and including 34 million who are of primary school age, so as young as 6 to 10. 30 million are out of school who would be in the lower secondary school age, and even more, nearly double, more than double, 67 million are out of school who would be in upper secondary school age. And in countries affected by conflict, girls are more than twice as likely to be out of school than girls who are living in non-affected countries. And I'm very happy to speak today with Ms. Nagiba Hassan, who has been working with school children and teachers on anti-bullying and cultural diversity, specifically also focusing on young girls. And maybe you can tell us more how you're addressing these issues, bullying, stigmatization, and in particular with young girls and minority communities, which is specifically relevant in the current pandemic. You just shared with us before that you have trained young people in the settlement that we saw in the movie. So that is also a very interesting connection and experience. If you could share a little bit about that, thank you. You're still muted. If you could please also unmute yourself, Nagiba.
Greetings of peace to everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. My organization has a very strong objective that is like prevention of violence against and among its children, youth, and children. And one of the things we do to ensure that we achieve this objective is creating safe spaces, safe environments in the children's spaces. And to do that, we need to work with the actors in those spaces. In schools, we work with the teachers and school management, with the non-staff, non-teaching staff, and with the parents, or at home, we work with the parents. Then later we work with the children. Because we have the approach of bottom-up approach, where we need to skill, to train and empower young people and children themselves to also advocate for issues that concern them. So the bullying comes in when we're doing child abuse, and it was so much when we just started in 2010 with the children on children's rights, and it was bad. Children were dropping out of school, some were staying between home and school, and we had to find ways of addressing it. So we have a program, because we know that any culture, because bullying was like a culture in most of the schools, for especially newcomers, or it's about religion or tribe, and that's how we came up with the cultural diversity. Because if people were teasing other people and then it leads to bullying, most times we found out that it was because they didn't know about the other culture. So when they got to know about people's cultures, then the bullying kind of reduced. But we put a program together, and it's an interfaith program where they have to go through ethics education and interreligious and intercultural dialogue trainings. It's mostly soft skills for the young people, but it creates spaces for them to think, to reflect, to appreciate others, and then come up with informed decisions. And when we're working with the teachers at schools, it's about interpreting of safe spaces. We take them through the alternative to corporal punishment, child-friendly methods of teaching, basic counseling and ethics education, and then dialogue. Because when they have these skills, then they create a safe space for the children in school. But at home, there are many other things that are happening, including domestic violence and gender-based violence. And most times when you invite parents for such trainings, they will not come because either they feel guilty or they feel ashamed, or they just don't want to associate themselves with what's maybe happening around. So we have a program we call creative parenting. And with the creative parenting, as you're trying to make safe spaces for the children, we help the parents to bond with their children. And we give them the skills in parent-child communication, handling different age groups, and so that they have that bond as parents and children. Because when they have that bond, then it reduces many risks for the young people. They will not go to ask for information outside, but they will ask their own parents or their teachers. Because most times when they ask someone else, not everyone is kind enough to these people, so they exploit them or even abuse them. And then we realize that when you do the creative parenting, parent-child communication, the feedback we get is it also worked for them to reduce on domestic violence, because the communication improved and some of the things that were happening were solved. So bullying is handled through that program. We take the children through understanding themselves in relationship to others, and then transforming their communities together. But like that takes time. We give them space. We make sure that it's safe for them to participate, to collaborate, to appreciate others, to freely ask, critically think, and then they see themselves in the bigger picture and what they can do. And that's how we've come up with the child-led or youth-led initiatives, where they come out of a session and they want to actually address something as young people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we heard about the importance of the culture of diversity and how Nagiba in her work is stressing that and is working on that. Mostly aimed, of course, at the girls at school or the children at school, but also including the parents and the teachers, who are a very crucial dimension to being successful in preventing bullying and ensuring that there is a safe space at school. We have with us from Finland, Ms. Heidi Rautionmaa, who is a planner of teacher training, so who's also covering that space, that safe space for teachers and creating guidance. You have worked in this area already for many years, and you wrote about the importance of digital storytelling, which is a method you used yourself as well to give Roma people voices and ensure that their voices are heard. I would like to know more, and we would like to know more about that digital storytelling project and how this is also a new method for interfaith education, which is constantly feeding from new digital technology, specifically nowadays. You're still muted, Heidi. Thank you. And you're still muted.
Okay, now I must be heard.
Now you will be heard.
Yes, thank you. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And first, I want to say my gratitude words for people in Uganda. You do such a great work, and I'm happy we Finns are in cooperation with you in somehow. Thank you very much for your work. So I will tell something about the digital storytelling method in education, because we are all having our story told. We are worth of this. And we learn from each other when we listen to each other. So what happened, it was actually about 7 years ago when I first started organizing digital storytelling workshops, because I participated in a meeting where some sort of specialists had gathered together to think of how they can make the situation easier for Roma people in Helsinki. And I recognized that the most of them had never even talked with the people they talked about. So this is like, okay, what you gonna do with the people if you don't even know the people? So they seem to have a lot of opinions about the people they had not really even know personally. So I saw the need to organize digital storytelling workshop with Roma people so that we hear their authentic voice. Stories in this case were the primary resource that Roma people could bring to the table. They may not have financial or technical resources, but they do have a wealth of experiences, wisdom, and beliefs, hopes. And through telling the stories, we all learn everyone's value, also our own, through expressing our own thoughts and ideas. So it is a pretty strong tool to be seen, and I guess we all know what that means to a person, that he, she is recognized and respected. So in the cooperation with some NGOs and the Union of Lutheran Church in Helsinki, where I was working at that time, we organized a seminar about Roma people, and we showed these short digital stories also there in this seminar. And we welcomed those who participated in these workshops to attend the seminar as well. So I spent some of my spring days on the street with people whom I have given cameras to film their ordinary day. And what we noticed the transformative effects of giving voice to own challenges, opinions, and struggles and foundings. The process of creating stories within a workshop is in fact sometimes more meaningful as the end products resulting from the workshop. Storytelling is a good method for reflective learning. Both the process of the storytelling and of listening to stories can assist the reflective process and so support learning. Stories can act as a catalyst to discussion and dialogue, stimulating further reflection for both the audience and the creator. And I have also used digital storytelling methods with Muslim youth. We had, for example, a workshop where Muslim young women shared their experiences on a situation where they have been bullied and discriminated, unfortunately. We did not only complain the situations, but we also tried to see how the stories could also have ended better if some people had behaved differently and stood up. And what else did we learn? Of course, we noticed that the digital storytelling method gives a lot of skills. Several literacy skills are gained for those who design, create, and present those digital stories. For example, research skills, writing skills, technology skills. Also, people gain interview, interpersonal, problem solving, and assessment skills through completing their digital story and learning to receive and give constructive criticism. This is very important, to learn to be critical and receive criticism yourself. And then, of course, information literacy, visual literacy, and media literacy. And global literacy, when it is like the capacity to read, make interpretation, respond, and contextualize messages from a global perspective. Like when we talked about the Roma people or some other issues that are outside Finland as well. And because of religious dimensions found in some of the stories and in dialogue among people, the project provided participants with religious literacy. That is one of the key competencies of interfaith dialogue. And I would like to also tell that next week we are once again having these digital tool methods. I'm giving some training for 25 teachers. Especially they would like to know how to take a notice of a student's background, cultural and religious background. And because now we have this pandemic everywhere, also in Finland, we cannot organize big training sessions face-to-face. This is going to be held at the Zoom through internet. So I will have some digital stories to show from the students, that they tell their point of views when they went to school, how their background was taking a notice and what they wanted when they were kids at the school. And then I will take the teachers to mosque, but virtually. The whole training takes like 1 day. Then there is 1 hour lunch break. So I go to pick my friend, Imam, and we go to the mosque and we show the place around virtually by using the digital tools.
That's wonderful.
Yes, so I look forward this next week a lot because this is a new thing for me, this virtual mosque visit. So as we say, learning all the time, also the teachers.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And thank you for sharing how important the storytelling within school is to share experiences, wisdoms you mentioned, hope, how it encourages learning and listening, and how it's actually a tool of empowerment that can help others.
Yes, and especially because I believe in experimental learning, and it includes experiences when we share our stories and we learn from each other's experiences as well. That's how we open the heart for the new things to happen.
And you actually, you already responded to the second question I would have had. So maybe just very briefly, out of the many things that you mentioned as skills that are important nowadays, but also for the coming days, what do you think is the most relevant one that schools really should focus on for today's and tomorrow's life of young people and children at school? What is the one thing you think that is really crucial?
Well, how to learn together, how to live together, how we learn to respect each other. And I also like to mention how important it is to learn to have a critical thinking methods, how you learn to be a critical thinker.
Thank you. And that is something that we also heard from Nagiba from Uganda, and now again Heidi repeated it from a Finnish perspective, giving her own examples. I would like now to move to Dr. Vichitasara, who is a teacher and an educator joining us from Myanmar, providing a very different perspective, or actually maybe a very similar perspective. He is working directly on the goal to achieving quality education. And I would like to ask you if you could share a little bit about the education system in Myanmar, and from your experience, how the education system in Myanmar ensures that all learners acquire knowledge and skills to promote the culture of peace, nonviolence, diversity, and human rights.
Thank you very much, Marlene. And my friends, very happy to see you in this very tough period. So can I share some photos? Can I share?
Sure, yeah.
So education systems in Myanmar, there are 2 education systems: secular education system and a religious education system. There are 2 systems in Myanmar. Secular education system is similar to your countries, maybe. Religious education system, it is different. You know, as for me, I became a novice Buddhist monk very young. When I was 8 years old, I became a Buddhist monk. Monastery education, there are 2 ways: traditional way and modernized educational way. So young monks must learn Buddhist scriptural text. In examination, they have to sit. So they have to learn. This is the biggest Buddhist seminary in Myanmar. There are over 3,000 monks live and study here in Mandalay, central Myanmar. So this is the traditional way. The teacher monk teaches, and the student monks. So many students gather in same place and they learn Buddhist scriptural text. And then this is a Buddhist university. There are as well like a traditional education system. They learn Buddhist scripture, but here they have to learn language in history or science. In traditional Buddhist temple, we don't have a curriculum for language, for science, for like a math, like a English language, like any other knowledges, modern knowledges. So as for me, I followed the traditional way of Buddhist education. And then when I was 20 years old, I studied my English language class, my English language, because, you know, basic level, we are not allowed to learn English language or any other language, any other education, apart from Buddhist text or religious scriptures. So after I finished my teachership program in traditional way, I can study language or science or any other education. So I continue my study. I joined a Buddhist university, and then I moved to India for 7 years to study. So this is an education for monks only. So I came to know to join a secular education system because I have to educate young generation. So I study and I share my knowledge to the monks. I share my knowledge to the monks like this. There are so many monks in traditional school, monastic educational school. They learn. And then I try my best to educate lay people, Buddhist education. And then I join the society and the community, a different community, like a KAICIID, like a you know, a Christian community, like a Hindu community. Now I'm a international fellow program alumni 2018 KAICIID fellow. So I try to share my knowledge of interfaith dialogue education with my people like this. They may be included with including monks and nuns, lay people together, and then especially for like a Finnish friend. She's given education to teachers. So these young people are teachers from all over the country. We organize and we gather together, and then I give interfaith dialogue, peace, education, and diversity. So this is my experience. And then even the mothers, fathers, the older people as well, I give education because we need peace education, educational knowledge to all. This is, you know, the photo I took with my Christian friends, promoting social cohesion for peace. So, okay, this is my experience and some knowledge about my educational experience in Myanmar. So,
thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much. So we heard a little bit about the two pillars of education in Myanmar, how traditional and secular education exists next to each other. And we heard how Dr. Ashin Vichitasara is trying to combine those and trying to reach out to the teachers working both with monks and nuns, but also with teachers, mothers, and fathers, who all of them educate the young people in Myanmar these days. And the focus, as we heard, is peace education, interfaith education, and social cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Maybe if you can give in one sentence, Dr. Vichitasara, your opinion, what is the most important task to ensure equal education opportunities in Myanmar?
So next week, like a Finnish friend, we have also a program. So a Buddhist way of teaching for the teachers from different backgrounds. So this is the fifth program for teachers. So the previous programs I came to know, they didn't have any experience with meeting different teachers from different religious backgrounds. So I invited the teachers from different religious background, from Islamic background and Christian background and a Hindu background, and you know, so they gather and they share their knowledge with each other. It was very effective for them. They came to know they should gather, they should meet together like this. They can get equal knowledge each other, because they never, for my Buddhist teachers, they never met. They've never met with any other religious background teacher. So they were very happy to see each other. So next week we will organize a fifth program for teachers. They will meet again and they will talk each other. Yeah, like this.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the most important aspects is to keep talking with each other as teachers from several backgrounds. This is a message that we heard from all of our speakers in one way or another. And thank you so much for joining us today. We heard how important it is to link education with sustainable livelihoods, to empower young people to fend for themselves and shape their lives, how it is of crucial importance to respect the diversity of cultures and recognize the diversity of cultures, specifically at schools, and to teach this to the young people, for them to be able to carry it further and include it into their own daily lives. We heard about the value of learning together and telling stories and sharing stories together. And lastly, we heard how important it is to overcome the differences and the barriers maybe in between different educational systems. And all of this was, I think, very inspiring to hear from all over the globe how education is approached and how in many countries, so many activists, interfaith defenders, lay people, religious people are really trying to support and achieve gender equality globally. I thank you so much for your time. I thank our esteemed guests and participants at this webinar and our distinguished speakers who came and spent their time with us today to have this exchange. Thank you for joining from Myanmar, from Uganda, from Finland, from Austria. I would like to conclude this webinar by sharing with you that this is just the start of a mini short film festival